What if I told you that some of the most powerful forms of control happen when people believe they are making their own decisions? Every single day, human behavior is shaped by invisible psychological forces, and one of the most dangerous of them all is reverse psychology, the ability to make someone do exactly what you want by appearing to want the opposite. At first, it sounds simple, almost childish. Tell someone not to do something, and suddenly they want to do it even more. But beneath that simple idea lies a terrifying truth about human nature. People hate feeling controlled. The moment humans feel pressure, restriction, or force, something inside the mind begins resisting automatically. Psychologists call this reactance, the emotional reaction people experience when they feel their freedom is being threatened. And once that reaction begins, logic often disappears. People stop making decisions based on what is best for them and start making decisions based on protecting their sense of freedom. That is exactly why reverse psychology works so well. Instead of directly controlling someone, it manipulates their emotional need to feel independent. Think about children for a moment. Tell a child to clean their room and they may resist immediately, but tell them you probably can't keep your room clean anyway, and suddenly they feel challenged. Now they want to prove you wrong. The exact same mechanism exists in adults, just in more sophisticated ways. In relationships, marketing, social media, business, and everyday conversations, people constantly use reverse psychology to influence behavior without appearing controlling. Luxury brands do this perfectly. They create exclusivity and make products feel unavailable. Suddenly, people want them more. Social media creators use it when they say most people won't understand this, because the brain instantly wants to feel included instead of excluded. Even relationships are filled with subtle reverse psychology. Sometimes the person who appears less emotionally attached becomes more desirable because humans naturally chase uncertainty. The mind values what feels difficult to obtain, and reverse psychology takes advantage of that emotional weakness. But here is the darker truth. Reverse psychology works not because people are stupid, but because humans desperately want to believe they are fully in control of their own minds. Nobody likes feeling manipulated. Nobody wants to admit their emotions can influence their decisions. And because of that, people lower their psychological defenses when manipulation feels indirect instead of obvious. Direct pressure creates resistance. Indirect suggestion creates curiosity. That is why intelligent manipulators rarely force people aggressively. Instead, they plant emotional seeds and allow the other person's own mind to finish the job. The victim believes the decision came from themselves, when in reality, the path was carefully engineered from the beginning. Reverse psychology becomes even more powerful because humans are emotional creatures pretending to be logical creatures. Most people believe they make rational decisions, but emotions secretly dominate far more behavior than logic ever will. Reverse psychology bypasses logic and targets ego, curiosity, pride, insecurity, fear, and emotional independence. One of the strongest triggers it uses is scarcity. The human brain hates closed doors. The moment something feels restricted, forbidden, or unavailable, its value increases automatically. Tell people they cannot have something, and suddenly they want it more intensely. This explains why forbidden content spreads faster, why emotionally unavailable people often become more attractive, and why rejection sometimes creates obsession. Scarcity creates psychological tension, and the mind becomes obsessed with resolving that tension. Reverse psychology weaponizes this instinct constantly. But perhaps the most fascinating part is that reverse psychology often works best on people who believe they are too smart to be manipulated. Intelligent individuals trust their reasoning deeply. They believe they are independent thinkers. And because of that confidence, they sometimes fail to notice subtle emotional influence happening beneath conscious awareness. In fact, intelligent people can become easier to manipulate emotionally because they overestimate their immunity to manipulation itself. The brain loves believing it is rational, but humans are filled with emotional blind spots that shape behavior constantly.
Social media already exploits this psychology every day. Notice how statements like, "You probably can't handle this truth," instantly create curiosity. Now ego activates, emotional tension activates, and people click. Not because logic demanded it, but because emotion manipulated attention. Even motivational content often uses reverse psychology. Statements like, "Most people will stay average forever," emotionally provoke viewers into wanting to prove the statement wrong. Reverse psychology transforms human pride into fuel. It manipulates the deep emotional need people have to defend their identity, and identity is one of the strongest forces controlling human behavior. Humans will fight intensely to protect how they see themselves. If someone feels their intelligence, independence, or strength is being questioned, emotional reactions appear immediately. Reverse psychology strategically triggers those reactions to guide behavior subtly. But reverse psychology also reveals something uncomfortable about the human condition. Many people are easier to control through emotion than through force. History proves this repeatedly. People rarely respond well to obvious control, but they respond strongly to emotional suggestion. Fear, curiosity, pride, belonging, rejection, and scarcity shape human decisions constantly, while people continue believing they are thinking independently. And this becomes dangerous when reverse psychology is used maliciously. Toxic relationships often depend heavily on psychological manipulation. A manipulative person may intentionally withdraw attention to create emotional insecurity. They may act distant to increase desire. They may pretend not to care in order to gain emotional control. Over time, emotional uncertainty becomes addictive, and manipulation becomes normalized. The frightening reality is that humans are far more predictable psychologically than they like admitting. Fear still controls attention. Rejection still creates obsession. Scarcity still increases desire. Ego still drives behavior, and curiosity still overrides logic. But reverse psychology is not always negative. It can also be used positively when understood responsibly. Coaches use psychological challenges to push athletes beyond their limits. Therapists sometimes use reverse psychology to help resistant patients confront destructive behavior. Even self-discipline can involve reverse psychology. Sometimes telling yourself, "You probably won't stay consistent anyway," can trigger internal resistance that motivates action. The mind constantly wants to defend identity, but the real power begins when you learn recognizing reverse psychology instead of blindly reacting to it, because awareness weakens manipulation. The moment you pause and ask yourself, "Am I making this decision freely, or am I emotionally reacting to perceived control?" you regain psychological power. Most people react emotionally first and think logically afterward. That is why manipulation spreads so easily online. Emotional reactions move faster than rational thinking, and reverse psychology thrives inside emotionally reactive environments. The strongest minds are not the ones that never feel emotional reactions. The strongest minds are the ones capable of noticing emotional reactions without immediately obeying them, because awareness creates separation between stimulus and response, and inside that separation exists freedom. Reverse psychology loses power once emotional awareness enters the conversation. Suddenly, manipulation becomes visible. Suddenly, emotional triggers become recognizable patterns instead of invisible forces. And once you see the pattern clearly, you stop reacting automatically. That is when real psychological independence begins. Not when you reject all influence, because that is impossible, but when you consciously examine why certain things influence you emotionally in the first place. Most people move through life reacting emotionally while convincing themselves every reaction is logical. But humans are not purely logical creatures. They are emotional creatures capable of logic. And understanding that truth changes everything. Because the greatest form of psychological power is not controlling other people's minds. It is gaining control over your own reactions. So the next time someone tells you not to click, not to care, or not to think differently, pause for a moment and ask yourself one question. Are you making your own decision, or are you reacting exactly the way someone hoped you would? And if this video changed the way you see human behavior, subscribe now, because the most dangerous manipulation is always the one you never notice happening.